Hello YouTube friends, it's good to see you again. Dr. Teresa here. Last time we left off, well, we were starting to play around with the tank and getting different pieces in place, and I was disappointed that I didn't have enough room to have the hang-on power filter and be able to put in a protein skimmer. And as I reflected on it more, I really grew concerned because the tank is already prorated smaller than what would be recommended for a pair of larger seahorses. So it really was going to be important for me to make sure that I had a power filter, a protein skimmer in addition to a power filter so that the water would stay clean. I mentioned that a protein skimmer is something that we use in saltwater aquariums. What it does is it pumps air into a specified area like a cylindrical tube, and it creates very fine bubbles. And on those fine bubbles, proteins and different invisible matter rises with the bubbles, and it removes into a sort of scum. It looks sort of green, and it actually doesn't smell very good when it builds up. But that's just telling you those are the kinds of invisible things that are building up in the aquarium that we don't see as aquarists. So one of the ways to get that out, in addition to doing water changes, is to include a protein skimmer. It will do a very good job in removing that invisible waste that builds up, and it will also reduce the need to do as many water changes. So I did talk about it with my husband, and being the great guy he is, he helped me out with it. And I'm going to show you here a quick changeover. Here's the original glass that came with the aquarium. You can see the unusual shape here. And in the back area here is where the filter would go, and the filter that I'm going to be using is going to be taking up quite a bit of space. The protein skimmer that I happen to have on hand, which is a pretty nice one, it would fit on the side here, and I'll demonstrate this in the next video about how it's going to fit together. So what my husband did is he took a piece of thick acrylic or plexiglass, comparable in thickness to the actual glass, and he cut out the shape and did a couple of things for me. One thing he did is he extended the back out longer. So I'm going to place the glass on top of here so you can see where the changes are. He placed the back out longer so there is a less of a gap between the hang on the back power filter and the inside of the aquarium, and the benefit of that is that there's going to be less splash. If you've ever had an aquarium, especially a saltwater aquarium, you know there is a lot of spray that goes everywhere and everything, and that's one of the things we'll address when we get ready to start setting up the tank. Another thing he did is that he notched out this area right here, and this area that is notched out is going to fit the high power protein skimmer that I'm going to be using on this tank. It is a hang on the back protein skimmer. So the nice part about that is it's not going to be intrusive inside of the aquarium, and it will actually contribute to the volume of water without interfering with the seahorse's space. So I'm going to move the camera over. I hope I'm not going to make you too dizzy. I have a bucket of water sitting here, and I also have sitting here the protein skimmer that I'm going to use. What happens is this particular protein skimmer sits on the back of the aquarium like this, and then this nozzle here goes in the water, and it attaches with a power head like this one here. This is the one that originally came with this. This is a Remora protein skimmer. It's an Italian design, Aqua C. And if you look inside, you can see it's been used, but it's got a special design that allows it to build a lot of fine bubbles when the power head sprays into there. So this would sit on the back of the aquarium like this. And then I would take the power head and the piece here that's free without the screen on it, I would use a little hose and attach it to that intake. So one of the things that I want to do today is just make sure that this power head is running before I get everything attached. And I'm going to do that now. I'm going to turn it on by plugging it in. And if it's running, then my next step will be to get this cleaned up and put together in the tank. All right, sounds good. I can show that it is running. Here we go. It's spraying water out, so I know that it is running. What will happen is that this back part will be filled with salt water, and this power head will pump the water in here, and the way this is designed, it's going to make very fine bubbles. And then I have a top for it again. This needs to be cleaned up, so that will be one of my next steps. But it sits very nicely on top, and you can see it's really not going to take up any space inside of the aquarium. The only pieces that it takes up is the return flow and then the piece that sits inside of the aquarium. And there's a nice little lid that will go on top here. And then one other piece that's really nice about this protein skimmer, is that on the edge there is a drainage. Now this particular skimmer has the option to not use the drain. You can just empty the cup. But because I know seahorses have a lot of waste, I'm going to take advantage of this, and I'm going to put a hose on here that will extend down to underneath the stand, and there'll be a little bucket underneath there. And when this cup gets filled up to the point that it's at the level of the release, where the liquid starts to drain, it'll just go right down the hose and then into the bucket. And then I don't have to worry about it as carefully. So probably once every few days or even once a week, I would just empty out and rinse the bucket rather than having to check this cap on the top every day and make sure it's not getting ready to overflow. So when we see it in action, what will happen is that bubbles will rise up through this little tube. And the bubbles, as I mentioned, are going to be generated by the device, and the fast pumping action into the design instruction here will create those little bubbles, and it's almost like a foam. And as I mentioned before, if you think about a beach and sea foam that you see on the sand, it's a similar process. So the bubbles will come up through this tube and they'll slide over the edge. They'll start to dissolve and form a liquid, and when the protein skimmer is breaking in, it might be a lot of liquid at first that looks kind of clear, but it won't be long before the liquid starts turning really dark green. And when it starts building up, like I said, it's going to start coming out the spout here into the hose. So next time what I'm going to do is set up the hang on the back power filter and the protein skimmer in the tank. I'm going to add a cap full of bleach just to help facilitate getting out this buildup that's been in here. Obviously, the last time I used this, I did not clean it up. Maybe that's not a good practice, but for whatever reason, I did not do that. And so making sure that everything is sanitized and ready to go for the seahorses, I'll show you that process. But here's where we are now. So thanks for following along with me. I hope that you're enjoying this series. I'm having a wonderful time making it. Hopefully it'll be a lot more meaningful once we start talking about the seahorses and putting them in the tank and observing their behavior, and how all of these decisions and steps were really important to think through before even acquiring seahorses. Thanks so much.